Her heart raced as she stood at the edge of the cliff, the wind whipping through her hair and the waves crashing against the rocks far below. This was the moment she had been dreading and dreaming of all at once, the moment that would change everything. She took a deep breath, closing her eyes and summoning all her courage. The weight of her decision hung heavy in the air around her, a bittersweet mix of fear and determination. With one final push, she let go of the past that had held her back for so long and leaped into the unknown. The rush of the air filled her ears as she fell, the world blurring around her in a whirl of emotions and memories. The wind screamed in her ears, but she couldn't hear anything but the beating of her own heart. And in that moment, suspended between the sky above and the ocean below, she felt more alive than she had in years. As she hurtled towards the jagged rocks, a sense of peace washed over her. For the first time in her life, she felt free. Free from the chains of her past, free from the expectations of others, free to be whoever she wanted to be. The waves reached up to greet her, the spray stinging her face, and she embraced the inevitable collision with a calmness that surprised even herself. But just as she braced for impact, a strong pair of arms wrapped around her, pulling her back from the edge of death. Startled, she opened her eyes to see a figure standing before her, their face hidden in the shadows of the setting sun. "You don't have to do this," a voice whispered, gentle and filled with a sadness that mirrored her own. "There's another way." Confusion clouded her mind as she struggled to make sense of the situation. How had this stranger known what she was about to do? And more importantly, why had they intervened? As she looked into their eyes, she saw a flicker of recognition, a spark of understanding that spoke to a deeper connection between them. And in that moment, she realized that this stranger held the key to unlocking the mysteries of her past and the secrets of her future. With a newfound sense of purpose, she took their outstretched hand and allowed them to lead her away from the edge, towards a destiny that was as uncertain as it was promising. She stared at the letter in her trembling hands. The words on the page blurred as tears filled her eyes. It was the last thing she had expected to receive on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. The letter was from him, the man who had once held her heart in his hands and then shattered it into a million pieces. Her heart raced as she read his words, each sentence pulling her back to a time when things were simpler, when their love was pure and untainted by the harsh realities of life. He apologized for everything, for the pain he had caused, for the promises he had broken. He asked for forgiveness, for a second chance. She crumpled the letter in her fist, the anger and hurt bubbling up inside her like a fierce storm. How dare he waltz back into her life after all this time, expecting her to forgive and forget? She had spent years rebuilding herself from the ruins he left behind, and now he wanted to sweep back in like nothing had ever happened. But as she sat there, the weight of his words sinking into her, she felt a flicker of something deep within her chest. Was it hope? Was it longing? She pushed the thoughts away, afraid to let herself be vulnerable again. She had worked too hard to protect her heart, to build walls so high that no one could breach them. But deep down, she knew that a part of her still loved him. Despite the pain, despite the betrayal, there was a small glimmer of the love they once shared, buried deep within her soul. And as much as she tried to ignore it, it whispered to her in the quiet moments of the night, tempting her to open the door he was knocking on once again. As the storm raged on outside, Sarah sat by the fireplace with tears streaming down her face. The letter she had found in the attic had shattered her world. It was a love letter from her late mother to a man who was not her father. The revelation was a dagger to her heart, and she struggled to make sense of the betrayal. Her mind was a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, confusion, and heartache battled within her. How could her mother, the epitome of love and kindness, have kept such a secret? And who was this mysterious man who had captured her mother's heart? Lost in her thoughts, Sarah didn't hear the front door creak open. Only when a shadow fell across her did she look up to see her father standing in the doorway, his face a mask of sorrow and regret. "Sarah," he began, his voice cracking with emotion, "I should have told you sooner." "Tell me what, Dad?" Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Her father took a deep breath before sitting down beside her, his hand reaching out to grasp hers. "That man in the letter, Sarah, he was your mother's first love. They met before I came into her life, before we even knew each other. But circumstances pulled them apart, and your mother chose to be with me." Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she tried to process the weight of her father's words. The room around her seemed to blur, and she held onto her father's hand as if it were a lifeline. "Why didn't she ever tell me, Dad? Why keep it a secret all these years?" Sarah's voice trembled with a mix of hurt and confusion. Her father's eyes glistened with unshed tears as he spoke. "Your mother wanted you to know the truth, but she couldn't bring herself to shatter the image you had of her. She was afraid it would change how you saw her, how you loved her." Sarah felt a wave of compassion wash over her as she looked into her father's eyes, seeing the depth of his love and pain. In that moment, she realized the complexity of human emotions and the sacrifices that were made out of love. The storm outside had calmed, but inside Sarah, a tempest of emotions still raged. With her father's hand in hers, she knew that their family's love was strong enough to weather any storm, even one born of secrets and unspoken truths. As the sun set, casting an orange hue over the rugged cliffs, Isabel stood at the edge, the wind whipping through her hair. She clutched the letter in her hand, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. The words on the paper had shaken her to the core, revealing a truth she never could have imagined. Tears welled up in her eyes as memories flooded back. Of her childhood spent in poverty, of the sacrifices her parents had made for her, and of the day she met Ethan, the man who had promised her a life of love and luxury. But now, all of those promises had unraveled, leaving her alone and betrayed. She took a deep breath, steadying herself for what she knew she had to do. With trembling hands, she unfolded the letter and read it once more, the words burning into her soul. "I never loved you, Isabel. I only ever loved your money. I'm leaving you for someone younger, someone richer. Don't bother looking for me. You were nothing but a means to an end." The truth of his cruel words pierced her heart like a dagger, but she refused to let him see her break. With a steely resolve, she crumpled the letter and let it fall from her fingers, watching as it fluttered down into the abyss below. Taking a step back, Isabel closed her eyes and felt a rush of liberation wash over her. In that moment, she knew she was done being a victim. She would not let his betrayal define her. Instead, she would rise from the ashes of her shattered dreams and forge a new path for herself. Without looking back, she turned and walked away from the edge, her gaze fixed on the horizon. The fiery determination in her eyes mirrored the setting sun, signaling the end of one chapter and the beginning of a new, empowered Isabel. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the abandoned warehouse district, Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. She clutched the forged key in her hand, her palms slick with nervous sweat. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for, the moment that would either set free or seal her fate forever. With a deep breath, she crept towards the rusted door marked with a small, inconspicuous symbol that only she knew the meaning of. The key slid effortlessly into the lock, the tumblers clicking into place with a satisfying finality. As the door creaked open, Sarah's heart raced faster. The inside of the warehouse was pitch black, the only sound the echo of her own footsteps on the concrete floor. She flicked on her flashlight, the narrow beam cutting through the darkness like a knife. And there it was, at the far end of the cavernous space, illuminated in a soft golden glow, the treasure she had risked everything for. The tears stung her eyes as she approached it, the beauty and power of the ancient artifact taking her breath away. It was more magnificent than she could have ever imagined, the intricate designs shimmering in the dim light. But before she could reach out and touch it, a voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Well, well, well, look what we have here." Sarah's heart skipped a beat as she swung around to see him standing in the shadows, a cruel smile twisting his lips, the man she had crossed oceans and broken laws to escape from. "You didn't think I'd let you get away that easily, did you?" he sneered, taking a step towards her. Sarah's mind raced as she weighed her options. She could run, try to fight, but she knew deep down that he was too powerful, too dangerous. But then, a flicker of defiance sparked in her chest. She remembered all the hardships she had endured, all the sacrifices she had made to get to this moment. With a steely glint in her eye, she made her choice. She raised her chin, her voice steady as she spoke. "You'll never have this. It's mine now, and you'll never lay a finger on it." As the sun dipped beneath the horizon, casting the sky in fiery hues, Sarah found herself standing at the edge of the cliff overlooking the vast ocean. The salty breeze whipped through her hair, carrying with it a sense of both freedom and despair. She clutched the crumpled letter in her hand, the words etched into her heart like a painful scar. It was a letter from the man she loved, the man who had shattered her world with a single confession. Tears welled up in her eyes as she read his words over and over again, each syllable twisting the knife deeper into her already wounded soul. "I am sorry, Sarah. I cannot be with you anymore. My heart belongs to someone else." The pain was excruciating, a suffocating weight on her chest that threatened to crush her spirit. How could he do this to her? How could he abandon her so callously, leaving her adrift in a sea of heartbreak and uncertainty? With a trembling hand, Sarah unfolded the piece of paper she had been clutching in her other hand. It was a plane ticket, a one-way journey to a far-off land where she knew no one and nothing. A fresh start, he had called it, a chance to begin anew without the shadow of their failed love looming over her. A bitter laugh escaped her lips as she thought of his audacity. Did he truly believe that a change of scenery could erase the memories they had shared, the promises they had made to each other? Did he think that she could simply forget the love that had consumed her heart and soul? Closing her eyes, Sarah took a step closer to the edge of the cliff, the roaring of the waves below a hypnotic lullaby calling out to her. She felt the pull of the abyss, the seductive embrace of oblivion beckoning her to let go of the pain and sorrow that weighed her down. But then, in that moment of darkness and despair, a spark ignited within her. A flicker of defiance that refused to be extinguished. Anger surged through her veins, hot and fierce, pushing back against the tide of sorrow that threatened to drown her. "No," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the crashing waves. "I will not let you destroy me. I am stronger than this. I am stronger than you." With a newfound resolve burning in her eyes, Sarah tore the letter and the plane ticket to shreds, the tattered remnants flying out into the wind like confetti. The weight on her chest lifted, replaced by a sense of empowerment that she had never known before. Taking a deep breath, Sarah turned away from the cliff and began to walk back towards the world that awaited her. The journey ahead would be difficult, filled with twists and turns she could not foresee. But she would face it head-on, armed with the knowledge that she was capable of overcoming even the greatest of heartaches. As the storm raged outside, Sarah found herself pacing back and forth in the dimly lit cabin. Her heart ached with worry for Liam, who had ventured out into the dangerous waters to save the stranded fishermen. The howling wind seemed to echo her fears, amplifying every doubt and worst-case scenario that ran through her mind. Suddenly, a loud knock on the door broke the eerie silence of the cabin. Sarah's heart leaped with hope as she rushed to open it, only to find a soaked and shivering Liam standing before her. Relief flooded her entire being as she pulled him inside, his cold hands seeking warmth in hers. "I thought I had lost you," Sarah whispered, her eyes brimming with tears as she held him close. Liam's face was etched with exhaustion and grim determination as he recounted the harrowing rescue mission. The fishermen had been clinging to their capsized boat for hours, battling the fierce waves and freezing temperatures. Liam had risked his life to reach them, his strength and courage shining through in the darkest of moments. As they sat by the crackling fire, the reality of their love and the fragility of life hit them both with a newfound intensity. Sarah traced the lines of Liam's face, committing every detail to memory, a silent promise to cherish every moment they had together. But amidst the relief and love that enveloped them, a shadow of doubt lingered in Sarah's mind. The storm may have passed, but the challenges ahead loomed like dark clouds on the horizon. Would they be able to weather the storms that life would inevitably throw their way? Would their love be strong enough to overcome the trials that awaited them? As the fire crackled and the wind howled outside, Sarah clung to Liam, knowing that their journey was far from over. The future may be uncertain, but in that moment, surrounded by the warmth of the fire and the unwavering strength of their love, she found a glimmer of hope that would guide them through whatever trials lay ahead. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a fiery glow across the sky, Sarah found herself standing at the edge of a cliff overlooking the vast ocean below. Her heart raced with anticipation as she clutched the crumpled letter in her trembling hands. The words written on the paper had torn her world apart, revealing a truth she had long tried to deny. The truth that the man she loved, Jack, had been deceiving her all along. The man who had swept her off her feet, the man she had planned a future with, was nothing but a lie. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as memories of their time together flooded her mind. How could she have been so blind, so naive to not see through his facade? But as the waves crashed against the rocks below, a newfound determination coursed through her veins. With a steely resolve, Sarah tore the letter to shreds and let the wind carry the remnants away. She would not be defined by the betrayal of a man who never truly loved her. She was stronger than that. She was a force to be reckoned with, capable of rising from the ashes of heartbreak, stronger and more resilient than ever before. Taking a deep breath, Sarah closed her eyes and let out a primal scream that echoed through the cliffs. The sound of her pain and anger intertwined with the howling wind, a cathartic release of all the emotions she had bottled up inside. When she opened her eyes again, a sense of calm washed over her. The weight of the truth no longer burdened her soul. In its place was a newfound sense of freedom, a liberation from the chains of a toxic love. With a resolute smile, Sarah turned away from the edge of the cliff and walked back towards the path that led her away from the darkness of her past. The journey ahead would be long and arduous, but she was ready to face it head-on, armed with the knowledge that she was capable of overcoming anything that came her way. As the storm grew stronger, the tension in the room was palpable. Sarah's heart raced as she confronted the truth she had been running from for so long. "I can't do this anymore, David," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I can't keep living a lie. I have to be true to myself." David's face paled, his eyes searching hers for any sign of doubt. "Sarah, please don't do this. We can work through this together. I love you." Sarah shook her head, her resolve firm. "I love you too, David, but not in the way you want me to. I can't keep pretending to be someone I'm not just to make you happy." A deafening crack of lightning illuminated the room, casting shadows that danced around them like specters of their crumbling relationship. Sarah took a deep breath, her voice steady as she continued, "I have to leave, David. I have to find myself again." David's voice broke as he reached out for her, desperation etched on his face. "Please, Sarah, don't go. We can make this work. We can start fresh, I promise." But Sarah pulled away, her heart heavy with sorrow, but her spirit light with the weight of her decision. "I'm sorry, David. This is something I have to do for myself." With one final glance back at the life she had known for so long, Sarah stepped out into the pouring rain, leaving behind the man she had once thought would be her forever. The storm raged on, mirroring the turmoil in her heart, but amidst the chaos, a sense of freedom bloomed within her. As she walked away from the house that had once been her sanctuary, Sarah knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but she also knew that she was finally on the path to her own happiness. The lightning flashed once more, illuminating the way forward with its fierce light, guiding her towards a future she could now face with newfound strength and courage. As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the horizon, Sarah stood at the edge of the cliff, her heart pounding in her chest. She could see the vast ocean stretching out before her, the waves crashing against the rocks below with a hypnotic rhythm. The salty breeze whipped through her hair, carrying with it the promise of a new beginning. Taking a deep breath, Sarah closed her eyes and let go of all the doubts that had plagued her for so long. This was her moment, her chance to finally break free from the chains of her past and embrace the future that awaited her. With a sudden surge of determination, Sarah took a step forward and spread her arms wide, feeling the wind lift her up as if on invisible wings. For a brief moment, she was suspended in midair, the world spinning around her in a blur of color and light. And then, with a sense of exhilaration unlike anything she had ever experienced, Sarah let out a joyous cry and dived off the cliff, plummeting towards the water below with a wild abandon that electrified her soul. The seconds stretched out into eternity as Sarah fell towards the ocean, feeling the rush of adrenaline coursing through her veins. And then, with a mighty splash, she broke through the surface of the water, her body cutting through the waves like a knife. As Sarah surfaced, gasping for breath and laughing with pure, unbridled joy, she knew that she had finally found what she had been searching for all along: freedom. The weight of the world had been lifted off her shoulders, and in its place was a sense of liberation that filled her with a boundless sense of possibility. With a renewed sense of purpose, Sarah swam towards the shore, each stroke propelling her closer to a future that was now hers to create. And as she stepped out of the water and onto the sandy beach, the setting sun casting a warm glow over her skin, she knew that the journey was just beginning. For Sarah had learned that true freedom was not about escaping from the world, but about embracing it with all its challenges and uncertainties. And as she stood there, surrounded by the beauty of the natural world, she knew that she was ready to face whatever lay ahead with courage, grace, and an unwavering determination to live life to the fullest.